What's up guys, it's your boy Goblins, and today we're talking about the Pokemon Go tier list. So the last video we talked about for Pokemon Go, we talked about Pokemon IVs, which means individual values, and how you can calculate individual values for your Pokemon in Pokemon Go. We talked about the importance of Pokemon Go IVs and how they are more important generally in comparison to the CP of a Pokemon, and overall those two numbers work in tandem with one another. So now we're going to talk a little bit about CP and the currently known tier list. So the tier list defines how much CP per power-up each Pokemon gets. There's S tier, A tier, B tier, and F tier. This list I'm talking about is currently posted on RANKEDBOOST.com. I'll drop a link down in the description so you guys can reference it later. So after you've calculated your IVs and everything on your Pokemon, it's time to decide, is it going to be a defender, an attacker, and is it worth my Stardust to actually level this up all the way, or should I just wait? And here's how you can tell. So currently, you're looking at the S tier list. The S tier list shows the CP per power-up of Mewtwo, Dragonite, Mew, Moltres, and so on and so forth. As you guys know, a few of these are not accessible right now, such as Mewtwo and Moltres, as well as Zapdos, Articuno, and so on and so forth. But there's currently some that are available, such as Arcanine, Vaporeon, Nidoking, Nidoqueen, and so on and so forth. Please take the time to pause the video at every tier list so you guys can check it out for yourselves, and go over the Pokemon that you actually want to boost up using Stardust and see if it's going to be worth your time to boost up their CP to get it up to par. So looking at the S tier list, for example, it's good to know that if I power up Snorlax, I'm going to gain 45 CP per power up, meaning it can be a high CP Pokemon a lot sooner than later, and is very comparable to fending off higher CP Pokemon on top of that, whether or not the IVs are there. Now that being said, if the CP per power up is good and the IVs on my Pokemon are 15, 15, 15, which is the absolute max on IVs, that means powering it up is going to be worth my time. Now here's the A tier list. You guys can see, for example, Clefable, Golduck, Golem, and so on and so forth. Now something to note is that Pokemon with a higher CP per power-up generally have a much higher CP cap as well. For example, Dragonite can go upwards to 3000 CP, whereas some Pokemon barely even hit 2500 and so on. And then there's the B tier list, which is Golbat, Venomoth, Primeape, Kingler, Tauros, Magneton, Dodrio, Alakazam, and so on and so forth. You'll also notice that a lot of these Pokemon gain more CP the farther they are evolved. So for example, if you have something that does have a triple evolution, such as let's say Poliwag, you'll notice that Poliwrath is actually in the S tier listing, which is very impressive. So sometimes it's actually better to evolve a Pokemon first and then use your Stardust in order for that Pokemon to gain a higher CP. And if you don't do that, you have the comfort in knowing that when you evolve that Pokemon at your current CP cap for your trainer level, it'll also go up in CP as well and be the equivalent to whatever tier it's supposed to be once it's evolved, if that makes sense. And then there is F tier, which has the lowest CP per power-up, so these are Pokemon you would obviously want to evolve first to see better CP gains altogether, and not completely waste your Stardust. Something to make note of is that Chansey is actually in this F tier list as well, and Chansey has a really low CP cap, but it's also because Chansey has an unreal amount of health, which makes her a really good wall at any gym. She's a fantastic defender just because she has lots of health, but that being said, she probably can't dish out that much damage, which is why I call her the equivalent to a wall, which can be very helpful depending on the gym composition, which is something I will also get into sometime later. And of course, you got Magikarp on the bottom, which is once again another thing I'd like to mention, where if you have a Magikarp that has lots of IVs, it's probably just better to evolve him and then power him up once he's Gyarados. Now, one last thing to mention is that your IVs also contribute to your max CP, and that's something to take note of as well. I don't believe it's actually known what the max CP cap is on perfect IV Pokemon, but it does actually slightly affect their max CP, so I've read online and so I've been told. So if you have a higher IV Pokemon, you're gonna overall get higher CP on that Pokemon than you would a Pokemon with no IVs, for example, or with low IVs, that is, which is why IVs still remain very important, especially when you're working with CPs and CP numbers, tier lists, and all that stuff, because they do work in tandem together. Now, if you guys want to watch that IV video, I'm going to link it down in the description as well as at the end of the video, where you can just go ahead and click it and it'll pop up in a new window. And that is the current Pokemon Go tier list. That is everything you need to know about leveling up, evolving, and what CP your Pokemon is going to get overall, and how much it's going to gain when you actually power it up, which is extremely important to note. And that's everything I have to talk about today, guys. As I always say, drop a like for your boy Goblins, and I'll be back here with more Pokemon Go content and Dark Souls 3 content shortly. So take it easy, guys. Have a general good, and I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out!